Hey card making friends, Sandy here. Welcome back to my channel. I'm playing with some new stamps from Simon Says Stamps, and I decided to do a layered mixed media set of cards. So we're going to start off with the Vintage Blooms. This is new and it's lovely. Has a matching set of dies, as you can see. I've got a tin tile stencil. I've also maybe thinking about a leaf stencil. I've got the thank you text and the Swiss dots, and those are all from Moments in Time. I'm using some distressed oxide sprays. We have picked raspberry, cursed flamingo, spun sugar, and worn lipstick, and some ink pads, punch, watermelon, rhubarb, allspice, and cappuccino. We also have a distressing tool. You need an acrylic mat to protect your work surface because you're going to get dirty. I'm working with watercolor paper and I have it pre-cut to 4 by 5 1/4, and starting with the lighter of the distress sprays, I'm just going to start adding color. What I'm trying to do is saturate the left hand side, but I want to leave the right hand side. I want to leave a little bit of white or some very, very light color so that some of my stenciling and splattering and everything else we're going to do is going to show up. I set the ink aside to dry, and we're going to move on and we're going to stamp our flowers because I'm using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and it does take a little bit to dry, but it's really, really nice and black, so you get a really nice stamped image with it. And right, you'll see me rubbing my stamp. I'm just trying to get the release finish off of it for when they do the molding. Make sure that you have it well inked, and then give it a good push inside your MISTI. Okay, we're going to set that aside, and we're going to do the other floral as well. Exactly the same manner and the same ink, just inking it up. And because of that, I couldn't decide which one to use. I end up making 2 cards, but I'm just going to show you basically the first card because the second one is exactly the same. It's just portrait instead of lens. And while we have the MISTI out, we're going to stamp some of those old-fashioned stamps, and the little stamp that says Fragile. I did the old-fashioned stamps in brown, the darker brown, which is the Allspice, and I used a couple of the pinks for the Fragile. And right now I'm just pulling out all of the coordinating dies. We're going to line them all up and we're going to cure them with some tape. Okay, now that I have run them through my die cutting machine, I'm just going to pop them out, and you'll notice the dies are very intricate. They even do all the little inside pieces, which is really nice because it's going to let our pretty backgrounds show through on the art pieces. Okay, so I'm going to use a tacky mat because we're going to do a little bit of stenciling. This is one of the new ones from Simon Says Stamps. It's square and I quite like it. And it's sticky, but not too sticky. Right now I'm trying to decide which one of those panels I'm going to use. Okay, made my choice because I like the white in the bottom right hand corner. Okay, and we're coming in with the tin tile stencil, which I tried spritzing some of the spray through, but it kind of ran a little bit and didn't work so well. So I was just cleaning it off there before I laid it down. And you don't need anything else to hold your stencil in place. The sticky mat will do that for you. So I auditioned a bunch of different ink pads before I started this project, and then I got it down to punch, watermelon, and rhubarb, that those 3 colors would show up well over top of the distressed oxide inks that I sprayed. And so I'm going to use a light and a dark pink brush, and I'm just going to ink blend a little bit in the bottom right hand corner and then in the top left hand corner with the lighter and the darker. Okay, and I'm just peeling the stencil back to make sure that I'm getting some good coverage. You don't want it to stand out. You want it to be nice, quiet background noise. I like having lots of layers of things going on in the background. So there's our first one. Next, we are going to start adding some of the elements, and I'm starting with the postcard stamp. I'm sticking that right in the middle, okay, securing it to my lid. I'm going to use Allspice to stamp it, the darker of the browns. Okay, done that. Going to clean that stamp off, and I'm going to move on. We have a couple of birds that I'm going to put in here, and I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to position them. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to see them, so you kind of have to figure out ahead of time where you're going to be putting your florals when you lay it down. And my florals are kind of go along the left-hand side and then down a bit. So I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go brown or black here. I decided to go black, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a stamping off with a scrap piece of paper or first generation stamping. Then I'm going to use the second generation stamping to stamp it on so that it's not too dark. You want it to look faded and old and like it's been sitting in a drawer for 100 years. Okay, so that's why I did that. So I'm just going to clean those off, and next we are going to do the canceled stamp. For the canceled stamp, I also decided to do this in black because I wanted it to stand out from the brown of the postcard image, sentiment image that is in the center of the card. But I'm just going to stamp it lightly. There, perfect. Okay, now we're going to distress all 4 edges. So I'm using this little Tim Holtz distressing tool. I've had this for years. I love this little thing. I just don't get to play with it very often. I really love doing mixed media cards, but I don't know why I don't do them more often. Maybe we're starting a new trend here. Who knows? Anyway, work your way around and distress all of the edges, and you're going to end up with a little pile of leftover paper, especially if you're using the watercolor paper like I am, and you want to just swish that out of the way before we start the next inking portion. Okay, so I'm putting this back down on my sticky mat and I'm coming back in. This time I am using the Cappuccino ink, which is the lighter of the browns, and a small blending brush, and I'm just going around all 4 of the sides, and I am adding some ink to all of that distressing just to highlight it a little bit. It also frames it out a little bit. So it makes you look at it a little bit more because it's darker. I guess that's where I'm going with that. Okay, so we're just finishing up that last little corner. Adding a little bit more brown on the pink areas and a little bit lighter where the white is. And you can simply clean off these mats with a damp cloth, and they stay nice and sticky. Next, we're going to stamp another layer of background noise. I decided not to use the thank you text because it's too small and too tight, and I snooped around in my stamps and found the old letter, and I love this. So I'm going to ink this up in brown. Again, I'm going to use Cappuccino because it's the lighter of the browns. And even though I'm inking the whole thing, I'm going to come in with a cloth and I'm going to wipe back a little bit of the ink. And again, for the vintage look, that, it's kind of worn out and you can't really see some of the letters anymore. Then I'm just going to grab my art piece, I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to rub. And then you get kind of this finish where you got ink in some spots and not in others. And it's layered, so there's lots of different layers going on. Next, we're going to splatter, and I'm using my Gamsa Tambi, and I'm just pointing out in the bottom right-hand corner, that second from the bottom is black. So just spritz it, water it down, and then splatter some of the black all over your art piece. Okay, now right here, I try and put that little line down the middle. I tried my Misty. It was really hard to get it to stand up. So use an acrylic handle for this step. It works a lot easier because you can lay the stamp down and then line it up. The grip mat, the sticky mat, is really good for lining it up because it's got that grit on it. Okay, finally, for our little embellishments, I'm again going to distress the edges with my distressing tool, and then I'm coming back in and I am going to ink all the edges with the Cappuccino ink, and I'm just dry fitting everything onto my art piece to see where I want it. You'll also notice that I've added a black mat, and it's going on top of a white card base that you can just see poking out underneath there. So I'm distressing the fragile sticker as well, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add a little bit of the ink to the edges. I'm getting some of those fuzzies from the paper in my little distressing brush, so I have to clean that off a little bit later. And then the black and white image is a little bit too stark for this now, so I'm coming with the little bit of brown ink, and I'm going to do the edges of all of this little foliage piece and a little bit in the center just to dirty it up a little bit and make it look vintage. The all white was a little bit too much when you look at the rest of this pretty distress card. Okay, and just trying to figure out where I'm going to position all this. And there we go. Okay, I saved you from watching me glue all this together, but I did use liquid glue because it gives you a couple seconds to manipulate what you're going to do and where you're going to put stuff. So for the original card, here's the finished one. I added the 3 stamps up in the top right hand corner. I added a black mat, and then I put some lovely gold thread around the bottom, wrapped it around 3 times, tied it in a bow, and then added the fragile. You notice I also added some gold Pawsitively Dazzling gems. Here's the second card where I used the bigger floral and I turned it long ways, or portrait, so that it would fit, and 1 stamp up in the top right hand corner and fragile again. So that's it. They're all done. Hope you like them. Everything I used is listed underneath this video. There's also a link over to my blog where you can get thumbnails and detailed description of how I created them. And if you enjoyed today's video, I hope you will give me a thumbs up, and I hope your thumb is a little bit cleaner than mine. I told you we were going to get inky. Anyway, thanks for stopping in, and until next time, toodles!